Hello, everyone. Sorry for the brief hiatus. I had some stuff come up outside of this channel. I had a different video that I was planning to put out kind of early next week, talking about that a little bit, as well as covering a variety of Minnesota Wild related topics. But tonight, the Minnesota Wild made a somewhat unexpected trade that I wanted to break down. Kevin Weeks reported it first, but here is Michael Russo kind of fully breaking down the trade a little bit more. Going to Boston are Marat Khusnutdinov, the 22-year-old centerman who was recently assigned to Iowa, and Jakub Lauko, who recently returned from the IL. The return is 27-year-old winger Justin Brazeau. We'll get to why the Wild dealt each of those players momentarily, but what exactly did they get in Brazeau as a player, and how does he fit into the short-term plans of the Wild contending this year? So Brazeau is a 6'5" right shot winger who has really worked his way up through the ranks of professional hockey. As you can see here, he started off his career in the Toronto system. He split time mainly with the Newfoundland Growlers in the ECHL, but did get a game up with the Toronto Marlies. He then made his way to Boston and split time between Providence and Maine, and then has just kind of worked his way up from there. He makes just 775,000 on his cap hit, so he comes in at a considerable discount to some of the other names that the Wild have been connected to leading up to the trade deadline here. And one thing to note is, as of a month ago, Brazeau has 15 5-on-5 points, which was fifth on the Bruins roster. He did so in incredibly limited ice time. He was averaging just 11 minutes and 15 seconds per game of 5-on-5 ice time, according to Natural Stat Trick, and that is of averaging 12 minutes and 58 seconds total per game in the 57 games he played this year. Brazeau has a nice scoring touch that he has flashed on occasion, but is currently in the midst of a bit of a scoring drought. That being said, at 6'5", he brings some great size and skill to the Wild's bottom six and can possibly slide in on the penalty kill as well. I think he's a really nice rental piece and should help out tremendously come playoff time. I think my main reaction to this trade from a Wilds fan perspective is kind of split in half. You know, as a fan who has paid attention to prospects coming and going, it does hurt seeing fun young players like Lauko and Khusnutdinov go out in trades like this. I'm still really high on Khusnutdinov as a prospect. I think he has a really solid future as a decent to high-end third center in the NHL. And Lauko brought some really nice locker room energy. He plays really quick. He can throw hits. He's just a really fun player to watch on the ice. However, looking at this more from a data perspective and trying to see kind of the front office angle of this trade, it does make way too much sense for these two guys to be involved and for Brazeau to be a guy coming back. Starting off here with Lauko, Lauko is injured a lot. He has not played more than 60 games ever in an NHL season and has only suited up for 38 games this year. As Russo pointed out, the Wild's front office concerned about his injuries both recently and kind of looking at the playoffs and whether or not he would actually be able to stay on the roster if the Wild go past the first round. And so I think that factored in a lot as to why they dealt Lauko out. Lauko was also not going to get re-signed this offseason. We have way too many young prospects, and a lot of them can fill a very similar role to him. And so I think his roster spot would either have gone to one of them or would have been filled by a different free agent that could maybe provide a little bit more stability to that role on the fourth line with the tons of cap space the Wild are going to have here in the offseason. So it makes a lot of sense to me why Lauko was dealt. Khusnutdinov is the guy going out that I think hurts a little bit the most. He was he has been really highly touted the entire time that I've really in depth paid attention to the Wild and all their front office moves in their prospect pools. He put up 40 points in the KHL just a couple of years ago. However, that offensive touch has not translated to the NHL. I think a part of that is he probably should have gotten a stint in the AHL. I think it would help a lot with his development. And at the end of the day, the Wild have way too many skilled center prospects that are going to be coming in the next couple of years. I can name four of them off the top of my head in Danila Yurov, Riley Heidt, Hunter Heidt, who's tearing it up in Iowa right now, and Charlie Stramel, who's tearing up the NCAA. And so I think Khusnutdinov, at the end of the day, didn't really have a clear long-term role with Minnesota. And I think the Wild saw that. They saw his lack of offensive production this year. They paired that with Lauko's injury concerns, and they made the decision to trade them both to bring in a guy they feel rounds out that bottom six more. And so I think that a fresh start on a team like Boston, especially for Khusnutdinov, Lauko's obviously played there before, but for Khusnutdinov especially, joining a team that really lacks centermen could be really good for him. He could get more of a role on that NHL roster, or if they want to start him in Providence for a little bit, that also I think would benefit him. But I wish him and Lauko all the best over there in Boston. The other really hidden benefit for this trade is Minnesota is clearing money. I think this is something that obviously factors into any move the Wild could make right now. They're right up against their cap ceiling. And the thing that we have to keep in mind is they are eyeing signing Zeev Buium at the end of the NCAA season. And because they've had to utilize LTIR space, they're not really accruing any cap. And so they desperately need to open up cap space wherever they can in order to gain a little bit of room for them to sign Buium right before the playoffs begin. And so moving these two contracts, although they're really small, in exchange for Brazeau's, who is at the league minimum, makes a ton of sense for this team leading up to the playoffs and leading up to them wanting to sign Zeev Buium to really round out their decor. Overall, I think this trade makes a lot of sense for both sides. Boston currently is not in a playoff spot, and so they're trying to sell off some pieces. They bring in two young players that don't really fit into Minnesota's long-term plans. One of them already has familiarity with the Boston system. The other one is a guy that fills a huge position of need for Boston. While the Wild bring in a guy who adds some much needed size and some skill to that bottom six that, quite frankly, neither Khusnutdinov nor Lauko really provided this year. And so I'm really excited to see what Brazeau brings to Minnesota. And as I said, I wish Lauko and Khusnutdinov all the best and can't wait to continue watching them develop in their new home out east. So what are your thoughts on the trade? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching.